Welcome to the Lifetime Assembly channel. My name is John, and today I'm going to help you assemble your Adventure Castle playset. Before we get started, make sure the model number of your Adventure Castle is listed in the description below. This video will follow the steps outlined in the assembly manual that comes with the playset, but if you've already begun and need help on a specific step, check the description below for a timestamp associated with each step. Your playset comes in several boxes and pieces, but should all be on one big pallet, so let's take a look at what you should have received. There are steps within this assembly that require 3 people, so be sure to have at least 2 other adults available to help. Before we get into the assembly process, let's take a look at the tools you'll need to complete the job. You'll need 2 3/16 Allen keys, which are included, a 3/8 wrench, a 7/16 wrench, a 1/2-inch wrench, a 7mm wrench, a Phillips head screwdriver, a 1/4-inch drill bit, a 3/8 drill bit, a block, a 3/16 Allen bit, which is included, a drill. You may just use an impact driver. If you decide to use one as well, be sure not to over torque or over tighten the hardware, a Phillips head bit, a rubber mallet, a hammer, safety glasses, and a ladder. To make this easier, we're going to use a socket set and a socket adapter. When building your playset, it's important that you choose a level area free from obstructions and at least 7 feet from buildings, trees, fences, or any other object. Also, to reduce the risk of injury, it's important that you prepare a shock-absorbing surface to build your playset on, such as recycled rubber mulch or wood chips. This video will focus on the assembly of the playset and not the shock-absorbing surface, so it's important that you refer to your assembly manual to review the safety instructions for this build. This video is meant to be used as a companion to the assembly manual and not a direct replacement, so for the best results, make sure to have the assembly manual on hand during the build. Alright, let's get started. Take 2 slide sections and place the wide edges together and the narrow edges together, making sure that the tabs go in the notches. Secure the wide edges together through these holes with the hardware. Now secure the narrow section together through these holes. Repeat the previous step 3 more times for a total of 4 slide sections. Don't make any more than 4 slide sections this way, because in the next steps, they'll be built differently. Connect the wide edge of another 2 sections, only finger tightening this hardware for now. Connect the narrow edges together, adding the bracket, and it can go on either side. Just make sure that it's oriented like this. You can tighten this hardware and then go back and tighten the hardware on the wide edge. Repeat the previous step 2 more times for a total of 3 sections that have the little bracket on the narrow end. The pieces you'll use in the next 5 steps are the slide exit pieces. If any of the holes are filled with plastic, drill them out with a 1/4-inch drill bit. Add the left exit panel to the foot panel, oriented like this, with the hardware. Only finger tighten this hardware for now. Add the right exit panel the same as the left, and only finger tighten the hardware for now. Add the hardware to the center of the 2 exit panels. Now you can tighten all the hardware. Fit each end of the top panel into the grooves like this. With the slide exit oriented like this, add a slide section that does not have a bracket onto the slide exit, lining up the narrow seam with this seam. Secure the section to the exit through all 12 holes. When connecting the slide pieces together, I find it helpful to insert all of the hardware going the same direction to make tightening the hardware easier. With this part of the slide oriented like this, take a section that has a bracket and align the narrow seams and secure with the hardware. Make sure the metal bracket is oriented like this. Take another section that has a bracket and line up the seams. With the bracket oriented like this, rotate the section counterclockwise until there's one hole in between the 2 brackets. Take another section with a bracket and line them up on the seams, and then rotate it counterclockwise so that there's one hole in between the brackets. Also make sure the bracket is oriented down like this. Take the lower support pole, which is the one that has the slot at the end and a tapered end at the top, and insert the tab nut into the slot. Line up the holes in the tab nut with the holes in the base plate, making sure the teeth go in the slots. Secure the base plate to the tab nut through the bottom. Slide the end of the upper support pole that has the hole further away from the edge onto the lower support pole. Line up the holes and secure with the hardware. Insert the cap into the top of the pole, making sure the holes line up. With the help of another person, lift the slide up and secure the brackets to the pole. One of the included Allen keys is shorter to make tightening this hardware easier. Take another slide section. The rest of the sections will not have a bracket. Line up the narrow seams and rotate counterclockwise so that there's one hole in between the bracket and the seam. Add another slide section, except make sure the narrow seams line up. Take the last slide section and line up the narrow seam with the large seam. Then rotate counterclockwise so that there's one hole in between the narrow seam and the large seam. Take the entry panel and drill out the divots in each corner with a 3/8 drill bit. Around the opening, there are 12 circular divots. Drill them out with a 1/4" drill bit. Add the entry panel to the last slide section, making sure that the protruding edge goes at the top of the slide section. Once it's on, make sure that the seams are centered with the sides on the entry panel. Line up the holes and secure with the hardware. If it's not already, carefully lay the slide down. Take your deck supports and orient them like this, and then insert the cap into the rectangular tubes. Place the deck supports together and secure with the hardware. All of the poles are similar, and it's important to know which ones are which. All of them should be marked with a parts identifying sticker, and some will be marked with numbers. For the upper tower poles, you'll have 1 1, 2 2s, and 1 3, and 2 longer poles that will not be marked. All of the tower poles need to be laid out in a specific order based on the parts identifier. Refer to your manual to see how to do this. We've already done that, so we're going to move on to the next step. Starting here, slide the upper tower pole GRO onto the lower tower pole GRJ, line up the holes, and secure with the hardware. All of the hardware moving forward will be tightened at a later step, so only finger tighten the hardware for now. This hardware may seem too long, but it will be utilized later on. Place a foot cap into the bottom of the lower pole, line up the holes, and add the hardware. Your assembly will come with 10 foot caps. 8 are smaller and 2 are larger. For this section, we're going to use the 8 smaller foot caps. With the help of another person, lean the deck support up. Take the pole from the previous step and place it into this saddle. Line up these holes with the holes in the saddle and rotate it so that the top pole is facing towards the deck. Now attach the pole to the deck with the hardware. Repeat the previous step over here with poles GRR and GRK. Attach the pole from the previous step to this saddle using the same method as before. Repeat the previous step over here with the poles labeled GRR and GRL. Attach the pole from the previous step to this saddle using the same method. Repeat the previous steps for this saddle, except this time you're going to be using poles GRQ and GRM. There are more holes in this pole, but there are only 2 sets of holes that will line up with the holes in the saddle. Repeat the previous step for this saddle using poles GRM and GRQ. To make attaching this pole easier, stand the assembly up. For this saddle, repeat the previous step with poles GRP and GRM. On the poles labeled GRY and GRX, add the foot caps to the ends that have the identifying letters. Attach these poles to these saddles, making sure the GRX goes on the left and GRY goes on the right. At this point, you can tighten all the hardware attached to the saddles and foot caps. Before you do, refer to your instruction manual to make sure all the poles are in the correct spot. Take the 2 deck panels and drill out the 9 divots using a 3/8 drill bit going from the top down. You'll also drill out the 9 divots on this deck panel as well. Place the deck panel onto the deck like this. Secure the deck panels to the frame with the self-tapping screws. The screws are designed to go through the metal underneath. Place a small deck panel here, like this. Secure the deck panel with the self-tapping screws, just like you did on the other panels. Place a handrail labeled GRS on the inside of the poles, but on this side of the tower. Secure through these holes, making sure the long bolt goes in the middle. Only finger tighten this hardware for now. Add another handrail labeled GRS just below the previous handrail using the same method. Again, only finger tighten this hardware for now. Add another handrail labeled GRT to this side of the tower and make sure that this extra hole goes on this side of the pole. Take the short handrail and place it into this opening below the previous handrail. Insert the caps into the top of these poles, making sure the holes line up. You may need to use a rubber mallet. For the next step, you'll need to remove this hardware. Place the metal barrier on the outside of the poles over where you just removed the hardware. Reinsert the hardware and then add hardware to the other holes. Repeat the previous steps on the other side of the tower. Take the pole GRU and GRV and insert a cap into the end that has a hole closer to the edge. Make sure the holes in the cap line up with the holes in the tube. Secure the foot caps to the opposite end of the poles. On the back side of the tower, insert a staircase frame in between these two poles, making sure it's oriented like this, and then secure with the hardware. Only finger tighten this hardware for now. Take the pole labeled GRU and attach it to the staircase frame through this hole. Place the next staircase frame in between these two poles oriented like this. Connect the pole labeled GRV to the staircase frame here. Take the stair panels and drill out the 7 divots on each panel with a 3/8 drill bit going from the top down. Place the stair panels onto the staircase frames like this. Secure the stair panels to the frame using the same method as when you attach the deck to the frame. Take a staircase handrail and attach the narrow end to the pole GRV. Take the next staircase handrail and place it over the previous staircase handrail and attach it to the pole GRU. Finish attaching the first handrail to the pole GRU. Secure the other end of the handrail to this pole. Take the handles marked with an A and attach them to these two poles. You can tighten this hardware and the hardware from the entire section. Take the short swing bar and insert a cap into the end, making sure the holes line up and then secure with the hardware. Connect the short and long swing bars together, making sure the pendulum brackets are on the same side. Add the pendulums to each bracket, but don't over tighten the hardware because you want the pendulums to swing freely. Slide the pole extension onto the A-frame pole, making sure that the small hole at the bottom goes over the slit at the top of the A-frame pole. Add the hardware, and it's normal if this hardware spins freely. Next, you're going to seat the poles together by striking the extension on a piece of scrap wood or cardboard 5 or 6 times. You're going to need to use some force, so be sure not to hit your toes. It's crucial that you complete this step, otherwise the poles could separate during use, causing serious injury or property damage. Secure the poles together by inserting a self-tapping screw into the small hole on the other side of the extension. Add the foot cap to the bottom of the pole and secure with the hardware. This is where you'll use the larger foot caps. Add a pull cap to the extension, making sure the holes line up. You'll add hardware to this later. Repeat the previous steps for a second A-frame leg. Orient your legs like this, and then place a bracket on both sides, line up the holes, and add the hardware. I like to finger tighten this hardware for now to make the next steps easier. Connect the turn bar to the two legs like this with the hardware. Add the swing bar braces to the top of the A-frame assembly, oriented like this. Place the swing bar onto the A-frame assembly, lining up the holes with the holes in the bracket, and then secure with the hardware. Now go ahead and tighten all the hardware from the previous steps. In the tower, locate this hardware and remove it for the next step. With the help of another person, lift the A-frame assembly up onto the tower, making sure the holes in the saddle line up with the holes that you removed the hardware from earlier. Add a washer to both sides and reinstall the hardware. Make sure someone continues to hold the A-frame until the hardware is secure. Add the hardware to the lower hole and tighten completely. Take the 3 roof panels and drill out the 4 holes with a 3/8 drill bit. Insert the caps into the top of the tower poles, making sure the holes line up. If you haven't already, go ahead and tighten the hardware for the tower extensions and the handrails. With the help of another person, lift the roof panel onto these tower poles, which are the two tallest. Line up the holes and secure with the hardware. Insert the bolt with the washer down through the roof panel. Place the next roof panel over these tower poles and secure it using the same method. Add the final roof panel to the remaining tower poles. On all of the dark gray panels, drill out the divots with a 3/8 drill bit. There are 10 on the large panels and 4 on the small panels. On all of the panels, bend these tabs on the edges back. If you're having a hard time bending the tabs with your hand, you can push them into the ground like this. Drill out the divots in each corner of the tan panels with a 3/8 drill bit. Locate this panel that has the slots and drill out the divots on the back side in between the slots with a 3/8 drill bit. Place the handhold over the slots, making sure the tabs in the handhold go into the slots, then secure with the hardware, making sure the small washer goes inside the handhold and the large washer goes on the back. Take one of the panels that looks like this and place it in between these two poles above the bottom step, making sure the textured side is facing out and that these notches are facing up. Repeat the previous step for the space below the panel you just added, except this time you're going to make sure that the cutout on the panel is towards the bottom. Add another small panel, making sure the notches are facing up in between these two poles. You're only going to secure this side so you can attach a window panel through the same set of holes. Out of the hardware used in this step, make sure to put the longer bolts here. They're labeled DSA in the hardware packet. You're only going to finger tighten this hardware for now. Secure the bottom of the window wall panel through these set of holes. The shorter bolts will go here. They're labeled FAM in the hardware packet. Connect the other side of the small wall panel while adding a wall panel that does not have handholds and secure with the hardware. Make sure to add a spacer. This step may be difficult, but we find it helpful to loosen the hardware on the opposite side even more to make adding this hardware easier. Now add the bottom half of the wall panel to these holes. Attach the rock wall panel and the other side of the window wall panel to this pole here. Connect one side of the archway panel and the other side of the rock wall panel to these holes. Then secure the bottom of the rock wall panel to the pole. Attach the window wall panel and the other side of the archway panel to this pole. Now connect the bottom half of the window wall panel to these holes. Fold the two panels in and connect them to this pole through the holes. Add the final archway panel in between these poles with the hardware. Connect the tops of these two panels to the frame. You may need to push on the middle of the panels to get the holes to line up. Repeat the previous step on the opposite side. Place one of the tan panels into this position and secure with the hardware. Add the other two tan panels to this side of the tower using the same method as before. There's a few locations you need to add hardware to. Here, here, and these two. Now tighten all the hardware on the dark gray panels. Secure the steering wheel to this hole here, making sure to add the washer, the clicker, and the steering wheel, and then secure on the other side. Then add the cap until it's flush. Now go ahead and add your swings and trapeze bar to the pendulums. Next, you need to anchor your playset, make sure it's in its final location, and refer to your assembly manual to see which poles you'll be anchoring. We're going to demonstrate on this leg here. Start by removing the hardware at the bottom. Next, add the washer, the looped end of the anchor, put the hardware back, but only finger tighten it for now. Place the forked end of the anchoring rod into the anchor, place the anchor close to the leg, and drive it to at least 12 inches into the ground with a hammer. If there's any slack left in the line, pull it through the clamp and then tighten the hardware on the clamp. Then add 2 more nuts onto the exposed threads of the clamp. Now you can tighten the hardware. We're not going to be able to complete this step because we're indoors, but it's important that you do, so refer to your instruction manual again to see which legs you'll anchor down. With the help of 2 other people, lift the slide up into position. Mark where the slide support plate is so you can secure it in the next step. Take your anchoring rod and drive it into the center of your marked location and drive the anchoring rod about halfway down. Place the slide in position, except this time you're going to place it over the anchoring rod. Line up the holes on the entry panel with the holes on the poles and secure with the hardware. Thank you for watching this video on how to assemble your lifetime Adventure Castle playset. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up. For more content like this, subscribe to our channel. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to our customer service team and check out our other awesome products at lifetime.com.